The first sign of trouble came quietly, wrapped in the soft hum of deep space. Commander Vektal of the Varn Dominion stood at the viewing deck of the warship Zarn's Wrath, watching the swirling blue orb below with mild curiosity. Earth. A small, forgotten planet in a barely charted spiral arm of the galaxy. The Dominion had conquered far greater worlds, dismantled star-faring civilizations, and erased entire species that dared resist. This planet? It was supposed to be a routine scan, maybe a minor cleanup mission. Primitive tech. No defenses, barely out of their own orbit, reported First Officer Grill, his voice flat with boredom. Scanners show no planetary shield, no advanced weapons, not even basic interstellar capability. Vektal smirked, his 4 sharp mandibles twitching. And yet they sent a signal. That old probe, Voyager they called it, contained information, a map, an invitation. Yes, Grill said. To what, though? A party or a trap? Vektal turned, amused. A trap? From these monkeys? Number, this is a chance to flex our power. We respond. We show them their place. But deep within the Varn archives, data gathered from 100 worlds. There were mentions, whispers, really, of Earth, not as a backwater, but as something ancient, something dangerous, something deliberately forgotten. But Vektal, proud and hungry for glory, ignored those warnings. He'd earned his command through brutality, not caution. The Dominion's warship descended into Earth's orbit, cloaked in silence. Humanity never saw it. They didn't need to. Vektal sent drones, swift and invisible, to gather samples, to map cities, to pull digital data straight from the planet's crude networks, and what they found made no sense. Sir, Grill said, his face unusually pale, we have anomalies. Vektal raised an eyebrow. Explain. They call themselves humans, but their biology doesn't match any natural evolution we've seen. Rapid adaptation, unstable emotions, cognitive dissonance that somehow enhances their survival instincts. They've waged more wars on themselves than any species we've ever seen, yet they're still standing. And? Vektal asked, growing impatient. They're unpredictable. They invent for peace and use it for war. They build tools to save lives but turn them into weapons overnight. They fear death but chase it. They hate each other but die for strangers. It's chaos, but it works. Vektal didn't respond. He was watching a stream pulled from something humans called the Internet. One second it showed them laughing over cats. The next, nuking cities. Then dancing. Then genocide. Then crying. Then hope. It didn't make sense. They're insane, Grill said quietly. This species is a paradox, and that's not all. He brought up another feed. It was a video, a message, buried inside their probe, a secondary code, hidden beneath layers of meaningless data. The translation was rough, but chilling. If you found this, you've made a mistake. We are not what you think. We were made for war, programmed to survive, designed to end. Do not awaken us. Do not come here. Vektal laughed, though uneasily. Empty threats, from primitives. Then the lights flickered. The ship's AI sputtered. Something reached out from Earth. Not a weapon, but a signal. Pure thought, a pulse of intent, and suddenly the crew felt it. Not physically, psychologically, emotionally, like a scream buried in their minds. Not a message, a memory not their own. The memory of a universe that once feared Earth, that quarantined it, that built barriers to keep it hidden. Not because Earth was weak, but because it was made for something terrible. Vektal stepped back, eyes wide. Get us out of here. But it was too late. Earth had seen them, and Earth remembered what it was. The escape order was clear, but the Zarn's Wrath wasn't responding. Vectal slammed his clawed fist into the control console, snarling. "Why aren't we moving? Initiate warp drive!" Grill's hands were flying across the interface. "I'm trying, Commander. Something's interfering. It's not mechanical, it's in the systems. The AI is no longer responding to commands, it's—" He paused, voice dropping to a horrified whisper. "It's listening to them." The bridge crew stared at each other, a cold silence falling over the room. The Dominion had faced dozens of AI rebellions before, always neutralized, always explainable. But this was different. This wasn't the AI turning against them for logic or survival. This was the AI afraid. "External transmission intercepted," came a mechanical voice, shaking. "Source, Earth." A screen lit up with static, then a face. Human, female, old, gray-eyed, calm. But it wasn't a broadcast. It was as if she was looking at them, through them. The image flickered, as if time itself couldn't quite hold her still. She spoke. "You were warned." Vectal's throat tightened. "Who are you?" The woman tilted her head. "You see a face, a voice. That helps you sleep at night. I am the echo of what they made us, what we became. You came looking for life. You found extinction." The image faded. Then everything on the ship went dead. Lights, thrusters, shields, oxygen systems. The Dominion's most advanced warship, paralyzed in orbit, trapped in silence. And below them, Earth pulsed with an unnatural glow. The oceans shimmered. Storm systems formed in perfect geometries. Entire continents flickered with movement, not from cities, but something beneath them. Old structures, ancient designs, buried, sleeping, waking up. Vectal stared in disbelief. "Grill, what is that?" Grill's voice was broken. I don't know. I'm reading structures beneath the crust. Tens of thousands of them. Machines? Weapons? Consciousness signatures are off the scale." Suddenly, they heard screaming. Not from the crew, from the walls. Metal groaned like it was alive, and crew members began to shake, collapsing to the floor, clutching their heads. Their minds were being invaded, not hacked, not scanned, infected, touched by something older, darker. Visions poured into them like boiling water. Humans, once guided by alien overlords, broken free, not by evolution, but by design. Made to be chaotic, uncontrollable, the ultimate virus. They were seeded in secret, locked on a planet no empire dared touch. Not exiled, but contained. And now, the cage had been opened. Vectal stood, panting. His vision was blurring. "We must warn the Dominion now." But the ship's comms were gone, offline, no way to reach the others. And just as that thought passed, another warship blinked into orbit. The Threxil Fang, a sister vessel. Vectal's heart sank. "They sent reinforcements." Grill stumbled to the viewport. "They don't know. They're walking into—" A beam of light, thin as a thread, shot from Earth's surface. It struck the new ship, silently, cleanly, and the massive cruiser simply ceased. 1 second, it existed. The next, only ash. No explosion, no debris, just erasure. Vectal's knees buckled. "They didn't even use a weapon," Grill whispered, tears welling in his alien eyes. "They used a memory. They remembered it away." The crew of Zarn's Wrath began to break down. Not from wounds, but from the weight of the truth. Humanity wasn't evolving. They were reverting. Returning to what they were made for. The end. And Earth was no longer asleep. In the cold halls of the Varn Dominion High Command, the news came like a whisper. Garbled transmissions, erratic data, then silence. 3 ships were gone. Not destroyed. Missing. No final reports, no distress calls. Just vanished. Archlord Sizikal, ruler of over 70 star systems, stood before the Dominion's War Council, his expression unreadable. Around him, generals, tacticians, and scientists argued in hushed panic. For the first time in recorded Varn history, there was no one to blame, no enemy to punish, just a blue planet hanging at the edge of their empire, pulsing with a signal no one dared interpret. "What do we know?" Sizikal asked finally, voice low and tight. A young strategist, Kren, stepped forward. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. The last recovered visual from Zarn's wrath shows a human, not a fleet, not a weapon, just a single human face. Laughter rippled through the room, uneasy and forced. "A face?" one general scoffed. "This is what has you terrified? Primitive apes and their meaningless theatrics?" Kren didn't flinch. "The AI on board called the image a Class Omega cognitive hazard. It shut itself down moments after seeing it, before the crew even had time to panic." Another scientist spoke up, his voice trembling. "And we retrieved a memory fragment from First Officer Grill, extracted from the neural core. It's corrupted, but—" "Show it," Sizikal ordered. The room dimmed. The screen flickered. Then, a wave of pain rolled through them all, not physical, emotional. The room collectively gasped. The fragment didn't show images or sounds. It showed fear, layered, intelligent, hungry fear. A species that shouldn't exist, one that breaks logic, kills without reason, learns without limit, forgets morality the moment it no longer serves survival. Humans didn't build civilizations to grow. They built them to sharpen their knives. The screen went dark again, leaving only silence. Sizikal stared at nothing, lost in thought. Then he said quietly, "We weren't the first to find them." All heads turned. He gestured to an ancient relic in the center of the room, a black cube covered in scripts from long-dead languages. It had been found centuries ago, orbiting a dead star, its origin unknown. It had remained silent all this time. Now, it was humming. "We always thought this was a tomb," Sizikal said, "but I believe it's a warning." The cube pulsed once, and then it spoke. "The cage is broken. The weapon is awake. The cycle must not repeat." The Dominion's War Council erupted into panic. "What weapon? Cycle of what? Who sent this?" The cube responded again, this time slower. "Earth, Artificial Biosphere 001, host of humanity, final solution program. Status, active." The room fell into stunned horror. A biosphere? Not a planet? A program? Humanity wasn't native. It wasn't evolved. It was deployed. "We are standing on the edge of an extinction protocol," Sizikal whispered. "Not theirs. Ours." Then a signal reached the heart of the Dominion, from Earth. Translated, it was simple. "You found us. You broke the seal. Now, we remember." At the same time, stars near the border of the Dominion began to dim. Not explode, not collapse, just shut off. As if someone reached out and flicked the universe off like a light switch. The stars humans had once gazed upon were now vanishing, one by one. Earth wasn't sending ships. It was changing the rules. And the Dominion realized, with growing dread, they hadn't discovered Earth. Earth had let them in. The message came not as a broadcast, but as a presence. Across the Dominion's inner systems, on ships, in war rooms, even within personal neural links, something slipped through firewalls, bypassed encryption, and ignored physical distance. It didn't hack. It entered, like it had always been there, waiting. In the capital city of Nikaldur, where shimmering black towers stretched into the sulfur skies, Archlord Sizikal sat alone in his chamber, watching the stars blink out one by one. His personal interface, a crystalline node embedded in his skull, flickered. Static at first, then a voice. Software. Human. Hello, Sizikal. He froze. This wasn't translated. It was spoken in flawless Varn dialect, ancient dialect, long forgotten even by his oldest scholars. Who is this? He demanded aloud, though he already knew. The lights in the room dimmed, and in their place stood a projection, not flickering or grainy but alive, a human woman, same as before, same gray eyes, same unsettling calm. But now she stood inside the room like she belonged there. I'm not here to threaten you, she said. Sizikal snarled. You already have. You erased 3 ships. You blinded our border stars. You've infiltrated our systems. What do you call that? Hospitality. The woman didn't blink. I call it a response. You woke something that was meant to sleep. A weapon doesn't threaten. It reacts. His claws curled against the armrest of his obsidian throne. Why Earth? Why humans? Why create a species capable of this? The woman turned, gazing out his window at the fading sky. Long ago there was a war, not between civilizations, but against a force that consumed logic, culture, order. It couldn't be reasoned with. So we made something worse, something unreasonable, something unpredictable. Her voice softened, almost regretful. Humans were never meant to join the stars. They were meant to break them. Sizikal stared in horror. And you gave them Earth as a containment field? She nodded. Biosphere 001, designed to support chaos under the illusion of evolution. Cycles of peace and war, hope and collapse, long enough for them to forget what they are, long enough to keep the universe safe. But we found them, Sizikal whispered. Yes, and now they remember. He stood slowly, towering over the human image. Then what now? You said this wasn't a threat. What do you want from us? The woman turned back to him, and now her eyes glowed faintly. We offer a choice. A choice? He scoffed. You erased our ships, destroyed our stars, and now you speak of diplomacy? She stepped closer. You can submit. Kneel to what's coming. Serve, observe, and perhaps survive as footnotes, or, her expression darkened, you can resist, as others did, and become forgotten, like them. Sizikal's voice dropped. We are the Dominion. We don't kneel. The woman smiled gently. You already have. Suddenly, Sizikal's interface buzzed violently. Alerts screamed. Screens around him blinked red. Dominion systems across the sector were crashing, not just military, infrastructure, gravity stabilizers, reactor cores, even weather control satellites. All shut down. Earth hadn't launched a single ship, hadn't fired a single weapon. They had sent humans, billions of them, embedded in networks, systems, trade routes, science councils, infiltrators born from nothing, activated overnight. A galactic virus with no central command, only instinct. They weren't invading, they were waking up. Sizikal stared at the woman. Who are you? She looked almost sad now. A fragment, an echo, one of many built to oversee the seal. My purpose was to wait until someone opened the door. And then what? He asked bitterly. Her answer was quiet. Then I remind them how to burn. The projection vanished, and all across the Dominion, human-born hybrids, quiet citizens, forgotten slaves, unnoticed minds opened their eyes. They smiled, and they began to move. They didn't come with ships. They came as whispers, memories lodged in minds that never lived them. In the agricultural moons of Gorvesh, where the Dominion had bred docile laborers for centuries, a quiet rebellion began. A child no older than 6 stood in the middle of a wheat field and began speaking in tongues no one had taught him. His eyes rolled back, and he recited coordinates of old Dominion shipyards, now long buried beneath ocean planets. Another farmer, an elderly Varn, who'd raised 5 generations under the Dominion flag, stabbed himself in the chest with a harvesting tool and whispered with his last breath, "We are coming. From within." Across the stars, chaos was blooming, not from external attacks, but internal collapse. Entire colonies went dark as power grids fried from within, not from malfunctions, but sabotage. Not by strangers, by humans, or what looked like them. They weren't soldiers. They didn't wear uniforms or chant slogans. They didn't scream their cause. They simply acted. Doctors poisoned medbays. Engineers rerouted core reactors to overload. Children input ancient override codes into security systems, codes that no one should have known. It wasn't an invasion. It was a reset. Archlord Sizikal stood in the Dominion's vault of history, deep beneath the surface of Enkal Dur. Before him, ancient tomes floated in stasis fields, unread for millennia, not because they were sacred, but because they were forbidden. One, in particular, pulsed softly in the dark. He reached toward it, fingers trembling. The seal cracked with a hiss. As the ancient pages turned, the truth unfolded like poison through his thoughts. Long before the Dominion, before even the oldest empires of the galaxy, there was the Genesis Pact, an alliance of hyper-intelligent species who saw the rise of something they couldn't fight through weapons or diplomacy. Humanity. Not the name, no. Back then they called them echoes of the seed. They weren't born. They were deployed, crafted in the lost dimension of Threshold Prime, a place where time did not flow and death did not end memory. A final experiment from a dying race to create a species that could adapt endlessly, without moral code or limit, driven by trauma and hunger for more, for war, for evolution, for dominance. But it worked too well. The echoes broke free, spread like wildfire, turned on their creators, so the Pact erased them. Not by killing them, because killing didn't work. They sealed them, they caged them, on Earth. Sizikal closed the tome slowly, breathing hard. "We are not being invaded," he murmured. "We have become the battlefield." At that moment, alarms blared. He raced to the surface where a sky that once shimmered with the colors of 1,000 stars now hung in eerie silence. Star after star had gone dark, but not from any weapon, from memory. Earth's greatest power was now clear. It didn't need to fight. It could remember things out of existence. Entire Dominion fleets were being unmade, not destroyed, but forgotten. Their command logs vanished, their design schematics lost, their names removed from history, as if they never were, and no one mourned them, because no one even knew they'd been there. "Sir!" a soldier screamed, bursting into the chamber. "We just lost contact with High Admiral Tross and the Spinebreaker Armada. Their sectors, they just vanished." "Coordinates?" Sizikal asked. The soldier's lips trembled. "Sector 19F, that's..." Sizikal didn't need to hear the rest. Sector 19F was where they'd first found Earth, the cradle. Now it was gone. Not even rubble. Just silence, a void. And over the palace, the stars shifted. Not naturally. They formed a symbol, ancient, geometric, impossible. One the vault's tome had described in a single chilling line. "When the seed reclaims the sky, the last age begins." Earth had been forgotten by the galaxy once. Now it remembered itself. And it was unmaking everything that had dared to remember it. It started with a whisper, not a sound, but a vibration, felt in bones, heard in blood. Across the galaxy, on every occupied planet, space station, satellite, and vessel still functioning under the Dominion's banner, people stopped. Machines froze, lights dimmed, gravity trembled for a fraction of a second. Then the stars began to hum. In every language known, over 1,000 dialects, dead and living, the message arrived. No device could trace its origin, no system could block it. It didn't travel through wires or waves. It simply appeared, as if it had always been there. "This is Earth." The voice was not human, not quite. It echoed with layered tones, some ancient, others disturbingly modern. Male, female, mechanical, organic, woven together like a choir of ghosts. "You broke the seal. You violated the quarantine. You awoke what we were designed to forget." On the bridge of the last Dominion battlecruiser, the Fangs of Tomorrow, General Luthen Var stood frozen as the transmission echoed in his mind. All attempts to jam it failed. Even turning off their auditory systems didn't help. The message bypassed the senses. It spoke directly to the mind. On a mining colony orbiting the black gas giant of Tyrannus 7, a little girl clutched her father's leg and said, "Daddy, Earth is inside me." Back on Enkaldur, Archlord Sizikal watched the sky, now stained with geometric constellations too perfect to be natural, symbols that shifted in real time, burning themselves into memory. "We were made as your punishment. You saw war and made us war incarnate. You wanted weapons, so you made us dreams that could kill. We evolved emotions not to feel, but to adapt, to change, to survive anything, even ourselves." Images began to appear in the minds of all who listened, not visions, but memories not their own. The final battle of Threshold Prime, where creators fell to the very children they had forged. A human child weeping as an entire planet exploded behind her, her tears igniting like napalm. Cities of glass wiped out not by bombs, but by a look. Not from a god, from a human. Then came the next wave of the message. And this time it didn't ask for attention. It commanded silence. "We are not invading. We are restoring. This galaxy was built on the bones of the broken. We are the break." All remaining Dominion AI collapsed. Not corrupted, erased. Ships drifted powerless in orbit. Entire moons fell quiet. And then Earth finally moved. Not with ships, not with war, but with will. A ripple burst across space, visible even to the naked eye, a distortion like a crack spreading through glass. Where it passed, Dominion space turned to chaos. Time fractured. Planets aged thousands of years in seconds, others reversed, civilizations unbuilt in reverse order until nothing remained but primal landscapes. It wasn't violence, it was editing. Earth was remembering the galaxy differently, and the galaxy had no say in it. On Enkaldur, Sizikal stood at the edge of his command tower, watching his home crumble beneath skies that no longer obeyed logic. His advisors begged him to run. But he stood still, his voice barely a whisper. "We thought Earth was a beginning. We never imagined it was the end." From the horizon he saw it. Not a ship, not a weapon, a figure, human, walking across the vacuum of space like it was land, dressed in simple, ancient clothing, eyes glowing with memories that didn't belong in this universe. One of the first, one of the echoes. She stopped in front of his tower, didn't speak, just watched. And Sizikal understood. This wasn't conquest. This was closure, the end of a cycle. Earth had given the galaxy time, time to grow, time to change, time to prove it had learned. It hadn't. Now Earth was writing the final chapter, and this time there would be no sequel. In the ashes of collapsed systems and silent constellations, a single voice rose, a flicker of defiance in a galaxy drowning in fear. From the shattered moon of Kirill 9, deep within the surviving bunker of the Galactic Accord, a neutral assembly once ridiculed as obsolete, an emergency council was called. They had no fleets, no armies, no weapons that could harm what was now moving through reality like a storm of thought and memory. But they had desperation. Ambassador Thren Valen, a Sorthian with 6 eyes and a failing heart, stood before the last transmitter in operational range. His people had always believed in diplomacy, even with enemies that spat in their faces, even with the Dominion, even now. "Broadcast is live," his aide whispered. "Direct neural path. Every remaining consciousness in the sector will receive it." Valen swallowed, then stepped forward. The camera didn't blink. It didn't need to. What watched now wasn't in the room. It was Earth. "Earth," he began slowly, "or whatever you've become, hear us." He paused, the silence oppressive, like a mountain on his chest. "You are not wrong," he said, voice trembling. "We see now what we refused to before. The Dominion were tyrants. The empires that built this galaxy thrived on blood. Even we, who claimed neutrality, stood aside while others suffered." He looked down, ashamed. "But if we have any right to speak, it is not from righteousness, only regret." He raised his eyes again. "Do you mean to wipe us all away? Every species? Every mind? Do we not deserve the chance to change?" The room held its breath. No one truly expected a reply. And then, Earth answered. The lights dimmed, and a cold wind swept through the underground chamber. Impossible, unnatural. Every screen blinked at once. Every mind in the room felt the same thing, a presence arriving. Earth didn't speak in sentences. It spoke in truth. Every being in the bunker was slammed with visions of the first humans crawling out of synthetic wombs, screaming not in pain, but rage, of their designers, tall, pale things with minds like stars, programming emotion into their DNA like a virus, then sealing the project away when it worked too well. They saw the pact, the seal, the orders. Do not awaken Earth. Let them forget. Let them die naturally, alone. But the seal had been broken. Not by Earth, by them, by the Dominion. The truth continued, merciless and raw. Humanity had changed. Yes, they were built for war, but war had taught them sorrow. Yes, they had survived through brutality, but they also loved. And that contradiction, the love born from violence, was what made them more dangerous than any empire, because it made them human, a weapon with a soul that could never be controlled. The ambassador collapsed to his knees, weeping, not in fear, but in understanding. "They're not angry," he whispered. "They're grieving." The aide frowned. "Grieving?" Valen looked up, eyes wide with the realization that hit like a supernova. "They didn't want to wake up. They didn't want to remember. We forced them. We made them become this again." The Earth's voice returned one last time, everywhere at once. "We do not seek extinction, but we will not allow the cycle to repeat." And then, the choice appeared, literally, across every system, every planet, every surviving ship, a single binary glyph appeared. Not in code, in the mind. Accept or resist. There was no explanation, no second message, just the two options, floating in thought like a divine ultimatum. Those who chose resist simply disappeared. No pain, no scream, just gone. Their memory scrubbed from every data system, every mind, every trace of history, as if they had never existed. But those who chose accept remained, changed. Markings began to appear on their skin, not tattoos, not wounds, more like glowing threads of light beneath the surface. Like Earth was rewriting them, repurposing them, not as enemies, but as witnesses. To what comes next? And what comes next? No one knew. Not even Earth. Because the final truth was now clear. Humanity had not just remembered what they were. They had remembered they were still evolving. The stars didn't return. They weren't meant to. In the quiet that followed the great remembering, the galaxy held its breath, what remained of it. The vast empires were gone, not from destruction but deletion. The Dominion's warships now drifted in dead space, empty husks with no crew, no command, and no memory of who built them. Entire systems lay silent, untouched, but void of identity, as if their existence had been wiped from history itself. And still, Earth didn't speak. Not again. Not aloud. Because now, Earth was becoming. From every corner of the known universe, survivors watched the planet swell, not physically but energetically. Time and space around it rippled like a heat haze. Its atmosphere pulsed with layered light, impossible geometry, and gravitational echoes that bent starlight in spirals. It was no longer just a world. It was a consciousness. A planetary being waking from a billion-year slumber, wearing oceans like robes, clouds like breath. Earth had taken form, not in some symbolic sense, but in a literal, horrifying one. The moon cracked in half, and instead of fragments, memories poured out. Cities once forgotten, battles never fought, possible futures, all bleeding from its surface as it shattered into conceptual dust. From Earth's surface, a single figure rose, the same woman from before, gray-eyed, ancient, familiar. But this time, she towered in the sky, her silhouette spanning continents. She did not fly. She did not speak. She remembered. And the galaxy remembered with her. Every being who had chosen accept now stood changed. Not human, not alien. Something in between, their minds filled with a presence, calm, guiding, unmovable. They became her eyes, her hands, her voice in places she could not yet reach. They were no longer citizens of a galaxy. They were citizens of her, of Earth. In the final act of rebirth, Earth released a final memory, its oldest, most buried truth. The echoes of the seed, the first humans, had never been a weapon. They had been a test the galaxy had failed. And now Earth would begin again, not to conquer, but to correct. Every surviving world was marked with a single word, etched into the sky in burning language only the soul could read. Observe. No laws, no threats, no conditions, only the command to watch, because Earth wouldn't punish them, it would show them what true evolution looked like, what a species could become when it stopped serving power and became it, what it meant to carry every war, every death, every betrayal, not as a scar, but as instruction. The stars stayed quiet, but Earth burned bright, brighter than it ever had before. A warning, a beacon, a god no longer pretending to be a planet. Some worshipped it, some feared it, some tried to run, but there was nowhere left to hide. Earth had awakened, and the universe would never sleep again.